afternoon. Hello. And a heartfelt thank you to all of you who came out on a beautiful afternoon on Earth Day, no less, to come and spend a little time with us and learn about gut health or GI health. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Couri, and I see a lot of familiar faces, but I'm wondering if I could see a show of hands of people who may never have come to one of our classes before. Oh, I love it. Good. Maybe you were drugged here by a friend that had come to a class before. Either way, we're glad you're here. So the class, I want to be very interactive, so I've got about an hour's worth of information to go through, but you can interrupt me at any time and ask questions. At the end, I promise there'll be plenty of time for questions. And the reason why we chose gut health as our topic tonight is because gut health is incredibly important for our entire health. And I would propose that if your gut is not healthy, the rest of your body will not be healthy. Your joints won't be healthy. Your skin won't be healthy. Your brain won't be healthy. Your heart won't be healthy. And it took me a long time to realize that. I've been practicing now for 13 years. And it took me about 11 years to realize that. And once I realized it, it completely revolutionized how I practice medicine. Because no longer do I label patients as having irritable bowel syndrome or spastic colon. I mean, really, what does that mean? It's a label so that we can submit that claim to the insurance company and get paid for that office visit. But does it really truly tell us what's going on inside that patient's colon? So once I realized that all health begins in the gut, then I can shed light on, okay, I think I know why you have the symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome, and I think I can help you then fix all of the other symptoms that you may be having that are related to that. So I liked this note card when I saw it because as practitioners who provide healthcare to women, we primarily focus on, obviously, women's health, our reproductive health, our gynecologic health, our breast health, our mental health, our hormonal health. But right smack dab in the center, being our gut health, I'm going to propose that if we don't pay attention to our gut health, a lot of our other female problems may come to the forefront and actually worsen. And it's for men too. It's not just gender specific. So I liked this slide when I saw it. I just had to change it to tweak it for our crowd. But no offense to the king in the red back there. But the gut is queen. And as we move through this lecture, you will realize the profoundness of that statement. So this is not new. This concept of the importance of needing a healthy gut is not new. Hippocrates stated it hundreds of years ago that all disease begins in the gut. And I don't know why it took me 11 years into private practice to realize that. I mean, we studied Hippocrates in medical school, we studied him in residency, but not till I was in the trenches seeing patients day in and day out did I realize that he was right. And now so many times when I'm approaching a patient with their problems, no matter if it's their elbow hurting or their arthritis in their hip or their migraine headaches or the fact that they can't lose weight, most times, 9 times out of 10, we start with the gut, and we heal it, and then we start to see improvement. So it is all about the gut, and these are just a few staggering statistics to explain why. So the National Institutes of Health estimates that nearly a quarter of us, or 70 million of us, suffer from digestive issues, whether that be gas or bloating, constipation, heartburn, diarrhea, nausea, very prevalent complaints. And for those of us who take care of women, we hear these multiple times throughout the day. But unfortunately, I think women get a bad rap sometimes because when we come in with complaints of I'm bloated or I have abdominal pain or I have a lot of diarrhea, oh, it's just stress, and it's in your head, and oh, it's this or it's that, or it's your hormones. But really, it can be much deeper than that. And that's where we gain so much, we get so much enjoyment and satisfaction out of actually finding the root cause and fixing it. So in integrative medicine, which is what we practice, we believe that these gut symptoms may be displayed in the gut, but yet their effects are systemic and can affect the whole body. So unfortunately, what happens in your gut does not stay in your gut. And perfect example, a patient who has a very diseased gut or a leaky gut, as we're going to talk about, some of the bacteria in that gut has been found in the joints of patients with psoriatic arthritis. So the gut and our joints are very, very tightly interconnected. So the gut is the core of our health, and it is essential to have a healthy gut in order to have a healthy body. So I found these statistics very interesting. So the surface area of our gut is huge. It's 200 to 300 meters, which is the size of an adult's tennis court. So that is the surface area between our mouth and our rectum. If you spread out our gut, it would fill an entire adult's tennis court. And little do most of us know that the majority of our immune system, 60 to 80% of our immune system, resides in our gut. So for those of you who get every cold that comes around, every flu that comes around, always getting sick, do we ever look at the health of your gut to see why? We should. 90% of our neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, they're made in our gut. So those medications like Prozac and Zoloft, those medications that the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they help to keep more serotonin circulating in the brain so you don't get depressed and you don't get anxious. Those work at the level of the brain. But if 90% of your serotonin is made in your gut, all the Prozac and the Zoloft in the world isn't going to keep 3 molecules of serotonin circulating in your brain to keep you happy. So patients that are depressed, patients that are anxious, fix the gut first. Their mood will significantly improve. So gut imbalances have been linked to hormonal imbalances. We do a lot of hormone balancing here at this office. The first thing I think of in patients whose hormones are completely out of balance, I think, what is going on in your gut? Primarily what's going on with the good bacteria that should be helping to metabolize your estrogen, because that's what they do. Gut imbalances have been linked to autoimmune disorders, and we'll talk about that in greater detail. So like rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's, which is a form of hypothyroidism, chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, those are very common, especially in women. Depression and eczema, all of these things, all of them we have seen significantly improved, if not eradicated, by just healing the gut. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Dr. Andrew Weil, I've got to figure out how my pointer works. Dr. Andrew Weil, kind of the father of integrative medicine, he has been a huge influence on my life and on my career. He's the reason why I practice integrative medicine. He had this very profound statement that said, we don't have a healthcare system in this country, we have a disease management system. And that is absolutely correct. We manage chronic disease. And unfortunately, well, let me start. If I was having an acute MI, if I was having a heart attack, or if I was having a stroke, or I had a life-threatening infection, our medical system in this country is the best in the world. No doubt about it. But how we manage chronic disease, like chronic heart disease or diabetes, obesity, how we manage these problems in this country is not all that great. We're acting way too late, and we're just putting Band-Aids on all of these problems. We need to start upstream and prevent these problems from happening, or teach patients lifestyle changes that can actually lessen the burden of these chronic diseases before these chronic diseases financially cripple our system, which is what they're doing. So, for example, if the water faucet is on, you've got a puddle of water on the floor, you could either ask for more towels to mop up the water on the floor, which is what we're doing when we just do lip service to treating heart disease or treating diabetes or treating obesity, or you could shut the faucet off and get to the root of the problem. That's really what we need to start doing more of. So the CDC states that 75% of healthcare costs in this country are spent on preventable diseases. So 3/4 of the billions of dollars that we spend in healthcare are on diseases that are completely and 100% preventable. And that's what's crippling our healthcare. So that, in my opinion, is what we need true healthcare reform on. What we've got, unfortunately, is insurance reform. That's basically what this is. And it doesn't help, and I'm soon to be off of my soapbox slides. I put them all in at the beginning, then we'll be through them. It doesn't help that we, the people, are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health. And we're treated by the health industry that pays no attention to food. So the food industry, their job obviously is to make money, and they may put some health claims on that multi-grain Eggo waffle to make you think that it's healthy for you, but ultimately, their job is not to pay attention to your health. Whereas it is our job in the health industry to pay attention to food, and that's why we have these classes like we do to spread the message. Because somebody has to, and I can guarantee you that if you had a dog and the dog was sick, and you took the dog to the veterinarian, and you said, my dog is just not acting right, he's not feeling right, the veterinarian, the first thing he would ask you is, what have you been feeding your dog? Now, when you go to the doctor and you say, Doc, my hip is killing me, I've been getting headaches every day, and I have these rashes, how many times do they ask you, in the first 5 minutes, what have you been eating? It hardly ever happens. You'll end up maybe with a few questions being asked and a prescription for an anti-inflammatory for your joint pain, a hydrocortisone cream for your rash. And what was the other, I don't remember the other problem I made up. But my point is, we have to start paying attention to food, because ultimately that determines, it's one of the biggest determinants of our gut health. All right. And again, this is the last slide in this series. True healthcare reform, in my opinion, starts in your kitchen, not in Washington, for a couple of reasons. Healthcare reform, it's important for how we cook, how we prepare our foods, teaching our children how to cook, eating the right kinds of foods. So we have to take personal responsibility to do this small part as a token of our responsibility in true healthcare reform, because I'm not depending on Washington to do it for us. So that's where we can take responsibility for our bodies, our temple that we have been so blessed to have, and that we can, make a significant impact in how we feel. Okay, so we're going to switch gears now, and this slide lists several symptoms that may or may not have any connection to each other. So rashes and acne, fatigue and joint pain, headaches, food sensitivities, maybe some postnasal drip, brain fog, anxiety, constipation, depression, diarrhea, migraines. All of those, if you ask me what's the common denominator of all of those symptoms, I would look at that and I would say that person's gut is not healthy. And that's where we need to start. You don't need to go to a neurologist for your headaches, an allergist for your sinus problems, a psychologist for your anxiety or depression, a gastroenterologist for your constipation or diarrhea. We can start by doing some very simple testing, asking some very pointed questions, and I can guarantee you, most of the time, the problem stems from disease in the gut. So healthy digestion is very tightly linked, like I've been saying, to overall health, okay? So a lot of this is repetition, so we don't necessarily need to spend a lot of time. But again, multiple symptoms in multiple organ systems all being linked to gut disorder. All right, so we feel pretty comfortable with that, but now we have to try to figure out what the common link is. What are causes of an unhealthy gut? How did we potentially get to this spot? Well, first and foremost, a poor diet, the standard American diet, SAD. The standard American diet is typically highly processed, high in sugars and artificial sweeteners, laden with artificial colorings, low in fiber. It's calorie dense, but it's nutrient poor. It's food-like substances. It's all of the middle sections of the grocery store, where you'll be bombarded by box after bag after can of labels, and labels, tons of ingredients. And that's the standard American diet. But unfortunately, that is a very inflammatory way to eat. It creates a lot of inflammation, and it's very detrimental to your gut health. And we'll talk about that in a few more slides. Stress is a very important factor, as it plays a role in harming gut health as well. Antibiotics. How many of you have been on an antibiotic in the last 12 months? Okay. We all need them. We know they're important. But unfortunately, multiple doses of antibiotics or repetitive antibiotics can significantly impact our gut health by destroying the delicate balance between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. So for example, if you have when I see a patient perfect example, I had a lady in her 70s who came to see me because she had terrible arthritis that the rheumatologist wanted her to start on methotrexate, a very strong medication for arthritis. And in listening to her story, she told me that, I said, when was the last time you felt well? And she said, that's easy. That was 2 years ago. I said, well, what happened? She goes, I fell down, I broke my wrist. Okay. I said, what happened after you fell down and you broke your wrist? Well, I had to have surgery. Okay. Then after my surgery, my wound got infected. And I was on 10 different antibiotics. And then I was on steroids because I had so much inflammation from the infection. And I said, okay. And I said, well, how's your diet been in all of this? Oh, my diet's horrible. I'm single. I eat out most every meal. I don't cook. So a lot of processed foods. So in putting all the pieces of this puzzle together, and her stress was very high, very high. Family doesn't get along, multiple stressors just in her personal life. So putting all these pieces of the puzzle together, this woman had so many strikes against her in terms of her gut health that once we did all the testing and we realized she had the worst case of leaky gut, and I'll explain what that means, that I've ever seen. Once we cleaned up, we tested her for food sensitivities, we cleaned up her gut, we got her on some supplements that she desperately needed, we replaced all the nutrients that she wasn't absorbing, and I saw her back a few months ago now, so this has been about a year and a half. She has zero pain, she has no more arthritis, she was getting rashes in addition to her psoriatic arthritis, no more rashes, energy was much better, she was sleeping better, she was off of all of her other medications that she had to go on for a lot of these symptoms she was having. So it's a perfect example of how these things stack: poor diet, stress, antibiotics, unhealthy microbiome. That just means the balance of your bacteria that's in your gut. We have good bacteria and we have bad, and it's very important that they are balanced. And antibiotics are one of the things that can cause an imbalance in those bacteria. Environmental toxins like the pesticides on your foods, the herbicides, heavy metals, mercury, the plasticizers like bisphenol A, all of those things can leach into our food and create damage to our gut. And then this is a huge category right here, medications other than antibiotics. Acid blockers. It's a huge financial gain for the pharmaceutical industry, acid blockers. Protonics, Pepcid, Nexium, the little purple pill, you can buy them on every street corner, or you can get a prescription for them. And they're ubiquitous in our society. But unfortunately, they don't necessarily, they weren't meant to be taken long term. When you read the package insert, it'll say do not take longer than 14 days typically. Patients are on them for years. They cause bone loss, osteoporosis, they deplete our vitamin Bs. So there's some significant risks with long-term acid blockers. The reason why they don't fare so well in your gut is because by getting rid of your acid, the bad bacteria can then take over, because the bad bacteria cannot live in an acidic environment. God gave us acid for a reason. It's there. We're supposed to have it. But if patients are making too much acid, instead of giving them a prescription to block the pump and not make any more or as much, why don't we find out why you're making too much acid? Food sensitivities will make you have too much acid. If you're not making enough digestive enzymes, you may be making too much hydrochloric acid. Do you have dysbiosis, an imbalance in bacteria? So there's lots of things that can cause us to make too much acid, but acid blocking medications, one of the biggest culprits for what we're going to talk about with leaky gut. Steroids can be very beneficial for patients that need them for severe, like rheumatoid arthritis or severe asthma or other autoimmune conditions. Steroids can be life-saving, but unfortunately, long-term steroid use also destroys the gut. Synthetic hormones, like what we find in birth control pills, non-steroidal medications like ibuprofen, Advil, Motrin, Again, I think a lot of times we pop those like candy because our joints hurt or we have a headache. So we're going to take those things and we're going to take them every day, multiple times a day. But unfortunately, that just adds to the insult to our gut. And then lastly, alcohol and artificial sweeteners, which are everywhere. Okay, so this is just a little evolution of how we eat. On the left is how we should be eating: whole foods, anti-inflammatory foods, tons of vegetables, fruits, things that don't come with labels or health claims, things that are very rich in phytonutrients and antioxidants that are going to actually be beneficial for our cellular health. But unfortunately, this is how we eat. We eat in a processed, inflammatory way that's, again, full of labels and easy, convenient type foods. And I thought this was interesting. It says about 80% of the food on the shelves of supermarkets today didn't exist 100 years ago. 80%. So we're delivering 80% new proteins, new sweeteners, new fillers to our genes that 100 years ago our genes had no idea what they were. And we expect our bodies to know what to do with them, and we expect to be, that those foods are going to nourish us. And that's where we have become derailed. So how Americans eat. We now consume new strains of wheat, rice, soy, and corn, so genetically modified crops. And we use and eat more genetically modified crops than all other countries in the world combined. We are the #1 consumer of genetically modified crops, whether that's good or bad. I don't want to raise a political discussion. I'm just talking about it from the health benefits. Also, concentrated animal feeding operations, which include the industries for cattle, hogs, chicken, and turkey. Those industries use antibiotics, they use hormones, and unfortunately, heavy metals like arsenic in their feed for these animals. So again, that when you ingest the protein of that animal, you're also ingesting the pesticide or the antibiotics and the hormones and potentially arsenic residues, unless you're buying organic beef, organic chicken, organic poultry that the farmer and their farming practices, which I strongly recommend. So the typical Western diet, our diet, contains 32 times the amount of pro-inflammatory nutrients than it did just a century ago. Okay, so we're bombarding our system with inflammation. Inflammation goes right to the gut. Remember, what happens in the gut doesn't stay in the gut. That inflammation is then going to permeate to every part of your body, including your brain and your joints and your skin. So that's why we see all of these systemic manifestations of what we're doing to our gut. These statistics were startling to me. Sugar. Sugar is everywhere in the standard American diet. So the average American consumes almost 23 teaspoons of sugar a day. 23. That's 77 pounds per year. And that's 476 calories a day just from sugar. But what is worse is that the average child consumes 34 teaspoons of sugar every day. Now, I know none of you would knowingly give your child 34 teaspoons of sugar, put that in front of him or her, and be okay if they ate that. But that's what we're doing when we feed them the standard American diet, because the sugar is everywhere. Captain Crunch, Fruit Loops, Nutri-Grain bars, you name it. Sugar is in everything and everywhere, and the drinks that we feed that we let our kids have. And just 200 years ago, we ate less than 1/5 of the sugar that we eat today. And sugar is very inflammatory. Sugar is toxic in so many ways. But I don't think we pay attention to the amount of sugar a lot of times that we're ingesting and what it can do.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that when you look at a label, and let's say it says 12 grams of sugar, let me see, is it 4 or 5 grams equal 1 teaspoon of sugar? So that would have like 4 teaspoons, is that
Yeah, it's startling, and you're
Yeah.
right. I mean, it can be hidden, and sometimes patients won't necessarily know the conversion or to do the math, but yes, it
But
can
is
be.
it 4 grams
It is,
equal
4
1 teaspoon?
for the most part.
Oh,
So with sugar, that's something that we can obviously pay more attention to and be more vigilant about. The next category that we talked about, antibiotics. I'm not saying don't take antibiotics. That's not my message. I took an antibiotic this year. I needed an antibiotic. But if we need it, we need it. My point is, let's be judicious when we need an antibiotic. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So the CDC last year, April of 2013, 4 out of 5 Americans are prescribed antibiotics each year. That's 80% of the American population get an antibiotic each year. And whether or not those antibiotics were truly indicated, I'm not sure, but the next slide will shed a little light on that. So studies show that 68% of patients seeking treatment for just, your acute respiratory tract infection, little cough, cold, maybe a low-grade fever, 68% were prescribed antibiotics, which in 80% of the cases were later found to be unnecessary based on CDC guidelines. So my point is, we're kind of bombarding, we as physicians are bombarding our patients with antibiotics that aren't may not be absolutely necessary, but all of those antibiotics do play a very significant role in affecting our gut in a negative way. Pesticides, so the pesticides and herbicides that are on our crops can definitely affect our gut health. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Environmental Working Group, a lot of you have probably heard us talking about this, but for those of you who haven't, the Environmental Working Group is ewg.org. Every year they update their list of fruits and vegetables that you should buy organic versus the ones that you don't need to. So they have the Dirty Dozen, and then they have the Clean 15. So the 15 fruits and vegetables that don't necessarily need to be bought organically, because typically these are things that you're going to peel, like cantaloupe or an avocado, or the rest of them just don't have a lot of pesticide residue. Whereas the Dirty Dozen, apples and celery and peaches and kale, all of those things should be bought organically, because when they're tested, they have very high levels of pesticide residues on them.
I just wish they would put an asterisk by corn, so to indicate that it's still beneficial to buy organic because of the GMOs.
Exactly, that is a good point. So even though corn is in the Clean 15, I would agree with Kathy that I would not buy regular non-organic corn. I wouldn't even buy corn at the grocery store. I would find a farmer that I know, and I know his or her farming principles, and I would buy the corn from them, because I want to know if the seed that they grew that corn from is genetically modified or not, because I'm not a big fan of genetically modified corn. Because if it makes an insect's gut blow up, I don't want to eat it. That was my soapbox. Okay. All right, proton pump inhibitor drugs, we already talked about that, but they are everywhere. Non-steroidal medications, we talked about it, they are everywhere. I just put this in to make sure everyone was paying attention. Artificial sweeteners, they are everywhere. And this is a very interesting study. I'm just going to go through this really quickly. So there was a study in a journal called Obesity from 2008. And they looked at, they titled it, Fueling the Obesity Epidemic, Artificially Sweetened Beverage Use and Long-Term Weight Gain. So they wanted to know if people who drank artificially sweetened beverages gained weight or didn't gain weight compared to patients that drank non-artificially sweetened beverages. So they followed almost 3,700 adults for 8 years, okay? And they looked at their consumption of artificially sweetened beverages, and they measured the incidence of obesity and their body mass index over time. And I'll be darned. So for those patients that were drinking, this is per week, so 22 or more artificially sweetened beverages per week, so about 3 a day. This is their change in their BMI. So they gained more weight compared to patients who drank fewer artificially sweetened beverages per week compared to people that drank no artificially sweetened beverages per week, okay? So I think the paradox is that my Diet Coke is not gonna cause me to gain weight because there's no calories. But it's not the calories that you have to worry about. It's what the aspartame does to your brain and your appetite center. And I'll talk to you about that on the next slide or two. So the researchers said they observed a classic positive dose-response relationship between artificially sweetened beverages and long-term weight gain. Linear relationship. Now my theory on that is, because I tried to figure this out, my theory is that aspartame has about a 50% conversion to aspartate. And aspartate is a known toxin. It damages the part of our brain in our hypothalamus called the arcuate nucleus. And that arcuate nucleus is what controls our appetite. So if we have a toxin that's affecting that part of the brain to tell us that we're full, then we may end up eating more and consuming more calories because our brain has been tricked. And that's my theory on aspartame. Yeah.
Does it, if you quit drinking it, does it regenerate or is that damage done?
Completely reversible.
I just had a question with regular pop or soda. Aren't they generally sweetened by fructose? So is that not artificial fructose? Or
It is.
so, I mean, really,
Neither one are good.
either one.
Correct.
Wasn't there some discussion with that study that people were eating more because they were drinking Diet Cola? And that was part of the reason why there was the long-term weight, because they thought they were protected by the Diet Cola and they,
Yeah.
had
And-
the hamburger and the fries.
And in that discussion of that study, that's where they talked about that theory with aspartame converting to aspartate, damaging the satiety center. So those patients were eating more.
Physical mechanism that encourages you to eat.
It does. Correct.
Did I understand you correctly? You said aspartame damages that part of the brain that makes you want to eat more because you're not satisfied? Because that's what high fructose corn syrup does.
They both.
Okay.
That is true.
Okay.
So the problem is, I think patients who drink diet soda think, oh, I'm avoiding high fructose corn syrup and I'm not going to have that same reaction. This slide is even more compelling to me. This was from last year, American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. I loved it because they studied 66,000 women for 14 years. It's a huge study. And they looked at the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And they compared it to women drinking regular old sugar-sweetened beverages versus artificially sweetened beverages. And you can see the women that were drinking artificially sweetened beverages had a significantly higher risk of type 2 diabetes than women who were drinking sugar-sweetened beverages. I would have liked to have seen the line that was like water. Those drinking water. They didn't ask me in the study, but so again, I think that's very interesting. Okay, gluten. We're going to spend a little bit more time on gluten later in the talk, but for a really, really comprehensive talk on gluten, I want you guys to come to Hope Plaker's talk, our physician assistant. That is in October 21. Hope's going to talk about gluten in much more detail. It is not October 21. It is August 19th. It is August 19th. Okay, so gluten can damage the gut, and we're going to talk about how that happens, because that's a buzzword now, right? Everybody's going gluten-free. The gluten-free aisles at the grocery store are exploding. You can't pick up the newspaper or read online and not see something talking in reference to going gluten-free. And why is that? And is it real? Is it real? So gluten, it's a protein. And in sensitive people, gluten can cause the gut cells to release something called zonulin. And I'll talk to you about this because you're going to see some slides, some pictures as I explain this further. But zonulin is not our friend, okay? So zonulin breaks down the tight junctions between our gut cells, causing our gut to be leaky. So I'll show you a picture of this, but just imagine if this is a gut cell and this is a gut cell, they should be sitting right next to each other, and there's tight junctions in between them, like hinges, holding them together. Because it's very important that they stay very tightly approximated. But gluten comes along and it releases zonulin, and zonulin cleaves those connections, and then our cells are now separated. And you'll see why that's important, because then that's how the mechanism of leaky gut comes about. So gluten, it's a protein found in many grains such as wheat, semolina, spelt, rye, and barley. Gluten means glue. It's Latin, meaning glue. And it is what gives bread its airy texture and fluffy texture, and it gives dough the sticky texture. That's why for those of you who make gluten-free bread, you can't flip it in the air and make a pizza crust and all that, because it just doesn't work. I've tried it. Gluten's also used as a stabilizing agent in many processed foods, such as salad dressings and mayonnaise, so it is in everything. Your hand cream. So we're no longer eating the wheat that our parents ate, because our wheat has now been hybridized. So that way it's drought resistant, it's bug resistant, and it grows faster. So it can make the farmers more money because they can grow their crops more quickly. So, hey Teresa, will you crank the air? So 5% of the proteins in hybridized wheat are completely new to our genetic material, okay? And so again, we're delivering into our system new proteins that our genes have never seen before, our ancestral genetic makeup has not seen before, and that's where we're having trouble with gluten sensitivity, and it's leading to inflammation and gluten intolerance and higher rates of celiac disease. The other problem with gluten is that today's wheat has been deamidated, which allows it to be water soluble. So when you make something water soluble, just think of where you can put it. So you can put it in every single kind of processed and packaged food, and it's a relatively inexpensive filler. So this deamidation process makes it a much more powerful load to our immune system, and then it produces a large immune response in many people. So in our modern fast-paced world where we are, have fast food at our fingertips 24/7, we're eating much more wheat than our ancestors ever did. The prevalence of celiac and gluten intolerance, celiac disease and gluten intolerance has increased significantly over the last 50 years. Very interesting, there was a study that was published in a journal called Gastroenterology. They compared 10,000 blood samples from individuals 50 years ago to 10,000 blood samples from people living today. And they found that there's been a 400% increase in the incidence of celiac disease. That is a lot of that is in direct correlation to what we have done to genetically modify that wheat or hybridize that wheat. The current literature states that approximately 40% of the US population has a gluten sensitivity, and I would have to agree. I don't know about you, Hope, and Sue and Terry. We do a lot of food sensitivity testing, and I'd say that's pretty accurate. We see about 40% of our patients come back with some degree of gluten sensitivity. And poor old Goldilocks, after she ate her bowl of oats, maybe she's gluten intolerant. All right, so what's the common mechanism? So gluten and antibiotics and proton pump inhibitors and your Motrin and our bad standard American diet, stress. What is the common mechanism that they harm the gut? It's pretty easy. So I want you guys to think of this fishing net, okay? Lots of fish in this fishing net, but none of those fish are getting outside of the net, okay? So remember that analogy when we talk about leaky gut. So the inner lining of our intestines is a very thin, very porous membrane, okay? It's almost like a fishing net or a mesh, and it's very, very important. It plays a very critical role. okay? So under normal circumstances, our macronutrients, our fat, our carbohydrate, and our protein, they are broken down and they can get absorbed through those tiny holes in that fishing net or that mesh into our bloodstream, because that's how we get nutrients, right? That's how we absorb our vitamins and our minerals. So that's perfect. That's what we want, okay? The gut membrane also keeps threats to the body out. So you don't want that atrazine that you just consumed that was on your piece of corn to cross through that mesh into your bloodstream, because I don't think any of us want atrazine in our bloodstream. So that mesh is very important to keep that out. Let's say you went to Mexico and you unfortunately got some traveler's diarrhea. You wouldn't necessarily want that bacteria to be able to pass through that net or that mesh into your bloodstream, correct? It should stay in the gut and be flushed out, okay? So the mesh lets the things that should go into the bloodstream, like our fats and our carbohydrates and our proteins, but it keeps things that shouldn't go into our bloodstream, keeps them in the gut. Okay, that's just a repeat. All right, so when the gut becomes leaky, what that means is those fine holes in that mesh, in that fishing net, those holes become bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden, partially digested food, bigger molecules pass into our bloodstream. Not just little fat molecules or carbohydrate molecules, but partially undigested food passes into our bloodstream. Yeast can pass into our bloodstream. Bacteria that we don't necessarily want can pass into our bloodstream. That is leaky gut, okay? So the antibiotics, the Motrins, the proton pump inhibitors, stress, all of those things make the holes in that mesh bigger. And that's when our gut becomes leaky. The medical term is called intestinal hyperpermeability. Okay? But it can be fixed. It can be fixed. So, all of those things we talked about, dietary proteins like gluten, proton pump inhibitors, antibiotics, infections, maybe a yeast, toxins like our pesticides, all of those things can cause the intestinal damage. But this is what I was talking about. This is a gut cell, this is a gut cell, this is a gut cell. These are tight junctions, and they're holding on to each other for dear life because they don't want anything passing through there into the bloodstream except what's supposed to. When those tight junctions get broken down, remember zonulin from gluten, breaks it down, then those cells separate and become leaky, and then all of a sudden, all of these things that you don't want going into your bloodstream do. And then once they go into your bloodstream, what does our immune system say? These things are foreign. We must attack them. So the immune system gets turned on and starts an inflammatory cascade. So that's where we get gut inflammation, and then it's going to spread out to the rest of our body, okay? And that's how food sensitivities start. So if you have, let's say, egg protein that's partially digested that gets passed through into the bloodstream and your immune system sees it as foreign, the immune system starts to create antibodies against that protein, and then lo and behold, you have an egg sensitivity. Same thing for dairy, same thing for wheat, same thing for corn. That's how we get food sensitivities. It's one way. Okay, now that's all pretty deep. And are there any questions at this point before we kind of put it all together? And I'll tell you how we fix it. All right. Okay, this is the quiz. Quiz. Okay, I put this slide up for a couple of reasons. One, it's Earth Day. This is beautiful. We were driving home from Florida this weekend. This is in Tennessee, Clarksville. And I looked out the window and I'm like, oh, what is this beautiful field? I love it. So I took a picture. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, I love it because all of these beautiful yellow flowers are so tightly connected like your gut cells. This is a perfect gut. Perfect. But this part of the gut doesn't look so good because there's no yellow. That's a leaky gut right here, okay? But then I thought, well, somebody might ask me what this is a picture of. So I'm Googling it last night and I found out, okay, this is a crop of something. And if anyone knows what this crop is, you will be the winner of one of our prizes. So that's in your bag. Or in the little piece of paper they gave you. So if you know what this crop is, in I think it's Clarksville, Tennessee, you win a prize. I was blown away. I had no idea what it was. I just thought it was a beautiful field of yellow flowers that God let me have so I could show you this is an intact gut. And this is not an intact gut right here. All right, so take a good look, and then if you know what it is, write it down. If you don't know what it is, write something down. You might be right. Okay, so we're going to shift gears just a little bit because we're going to talk about something, a very important something that helps to keep our gut from being leaky. And it's in all of us. All of us have it. It's different in every single one of us. Not two of us in this room are alike when it comes to our microbiome. That means the bacteria that live in our gut. Okay? Mine is different than Ann's. Ann's is different than Teresa's. No two are alike. They're like fingerprints. And this is a very hot topic of research right now because they're researching about why lean people have certain bacteria, whereas obese people have other kinds of bacteria. And when they took a lean mouse and they took the bacteria out of fecal material out of that bacteria or out of that mouse and put it in an obese mouse, that mouse became thin, and vice versa. So this is a very hot topic of research. It's called our microbiome, and it is the genetic footprint of our bacteria that's in our gut. Okay, so there are more than 1 billion bacteria in one drop, in each drop of fluid in your colon, in your large intestine. That is an incredible amount. Most adults carry somewhere between 3 and 5 pounds of bacteria in their guts. That's a lot. That's a lot. So it's 10 times, the amount of bacteria in our gut is 10 times the amount of total cells in our body. So there's more bacterial cells in our body than our own cells, which I find amazing. And the number of genes in our intestinal bacteria is 150 times greater than the number of genes in a human. Okay? So they're right. They are the 99%. We are. So the microbiome, like I said, is distinctive from person to person. Your bacterial footprint develops over a lifetime. It starts the minute you're born. The minute you're born. And it comes typically from the bacteria that you get in your mother's vagina when you're born. And if you're born by a C-section, you're born with a totally different set of bacteria than your sibling who was born by a vaginal delivery. And that's why they're studying siblings, some born vaginally, some had a C-section. C-section babies have a significantly higher risk of asthma, allergies, and autoimmunity because they don't get the same amount and the same kinds of bacteria that babies that are born vaginally. It's very important. It's very fascinating. Okay? So balance of these bacteria is very critical because there's good ones and there's bad ones. They have to live in harmony, but when the bad ones take over, that's when we get sick. Okay? All right, so we talked about C-section versus vaginal delivery. Yeah, we talked about all that. Not only do our bacteria play an important role in keeping our gut from being leaky, they also help us synthesize our vitamins, our B vitamins and vitamin K. So when we have patients who we test and they're chronically deficient in vitamin B or B12, and I keep giving them B12. I give it to them and I give it to them. I'm like, why can't I get your B12 level up? Hello? I finally figured it out. Their gut isn't healthy because the gut, those bacteria help to synthesize B12. So if they have predominantly bad bacteria that aren't synthesizing the B12, that was the missing link that it took me a long time to realize. The bacteria also produce digestive enzymes to aid in the absorption of calcium, iron, and magnesium. And these bacteria act as a gatekeeper so that other bad bacteria and yeast and parasites don't overgrow, okay? Or leak out into your bloodstream, travel to your hip, and cause really bad arthritis. Okay, so friendly bacteria, acidophil, like lactobacillus and bifidobacter strains, unfriendly bacteria, E. coli, Prevotella, and yeast, all those are bad. So the good guys have to keep the bad guys in check. So this is also very important. I want you to remember this. So every time you eat or drink, you're either feeding disease or you're fighting it. Because everything you eat affects those bacteria, those trillions of bacteria that are there for a reason. You can either feed them well, good healthy food, or you can feed them not so healthy food, and then the entire makeup of the bacteria will change, and I'll show you why. So if you feed your gut all of this stuff, hamburgers and pizza and french fries and ice cream and hot dogs and soda, that's going to feed all of the bad bacteria. That helps the bad bacteria take over, because the good bacteria are smart enough, they don't want it. Bad bacteria do. The good bacteria need fiber, they need fermented foods and other healthy type things. So what you eat truly does have an impact on the balance of your bacteria. So how do we keep our bacteria happy? We avoid the triggers. So we minimize antibiotics if we can. We minimize being on those acid blockers for a long time. We encourage the growth of good bacteria, so we eat foods that are like prebiotics. Prebiotics are the foods that feed the probiotics, the good bacteria. And I have a slide on that. So like artichoke and chicory and lentils, garlic, onions, those things are all prebiotics. And then we repopulate the gut with good bacteria. Just got to get a little water here. Okay. So we got to repopulate the gut with good bacteria, and that's probiotics. Okay. So this is kind of a busy slide. I've really kind of already gone over most of this. The only thing that I may not have driven home is that when the gut gets leaky and those food particles or other antigens like bacteria or yeast, when they cross over into our bloodstream, it turns on our immune system, like I said. Then the immune system starts attacking it. It attacks it as kind of like ourself, autoimmunity, and that's the link between why patients that have a lot of autoimmune diseases like multiple sclerosis and rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, Hashimoto's thyroid disease, why a lot of those patients have a leaky gut, because their immune system is on overdrive. Autoimmunity, there are more than 80 autoimmune disorders reported in the literature, and more than 50 million Americans are affected, women more than men, whereas cancer affects about 13 million Americans. So autoimmunity is a huge, huge subset of our population. It is one of the 10 leading causes of death in female children and women of all ages. And the gut plays a greater role in autoimmunity than what we previously thought. So this leads me down to kind of wrap this up with if the foods that we eat have such a direct impact on our gut health, what if we're eating foods that we are sensitive to? What if we're sensitive to corn or dairy or gluten? What if those foods are making our gut leaky and then turning on our immune system to then cause us to have more food sensitivities? It's kind of a vicious cycle. So my question is, should we be tested for food sensitivities? And I say, absolutely yes. In a number of situations, we do a lot of food sensitivity testing or food intolerance testing here. And it's a blood test. There's different companies that do it. This is one company called Alcat, and it just shows you that this patient in this red category had a severe intolerance to cauliflower, coffee, lemon, pineapple, spinach, had a moderate intolerance to several other foods, and a mild intolerance to many others. So that's just one reporting mechanism. Now, this test does not look for immediate food allergies. Like, this is not the test that you would get, like if you ate a peanut and your throat swelled up. That's not what this test is. Because that test is what we call IgE. That's the reaction, immediate reaction that the immune system kicks out if you ate a peanut and you had an anaphylactic reaction. This is an IgG test, which is a delayed reaction. So let's say you ate a peanut, you can breathe just fine, but a day or two later, your joints are really achy, or you've got a rash, or your acne got worse. That's what we're talking about with food sensitivities that are delayed. This is another example. This was the first half of mine. Luckily, coffee was fine, and chocolate was fine. But I was kind of bummed about some of the other ones. I didn't put the second part on here, but this is just a different test. If it's in the black, there's no reaction. 1+ is a mild reaction. 2+ is a moderate reaction, and 3+ is a severe reaction. So this test, so let me show you. Then another one, this is another patient. Look how many things she's sensitive to, okay? She's got 2s and 3s all over the paper. That is not normal. You're not born with sensitivities to that many things. So her immune system is on overdrive. Her gut has got to be leaky because her immune system is reacting to everything. So this test helps me in a number of ways. We check it. It gives us a roadmap to find out what you're sensitive to and what you should be avoiding. The second thing that it helps me with is the more things you react to, I can guarantee you have a leaky gut. I do not have to put you through that urinary test to see if you have leaky gut because there is a urine test for it. You don't have to do that. I can look at that and say, we have a problem. Your gut is leaky. We have to fix it. The interesting thing about this patient is, and this is a patient of Hope's, my physician assistant. Hope is very, very intuitive with gut health. She's taught me an incredible amount. And Hope took it one step further because she just didn't like the results of this test. And this is a patient who just came to sign up for our 15-week lifestyle program. She really wasn't having a lot of symptoms. Hope didn't like the way this looked, so she's like, I just want to test you to see if you have celiac disease, which is an extreme form of gluten sensitivity, life-threatening if it goes untreated for years. Because her gluten, where's her gluten? I wonder if I have it on the other, I must have it on the other page, or I cut it off. Let me see if it's on the other page. Her gluten was 3+. Wheat was 3+. So Hope checked her, did a blood test, and lo and behold, she has celiac disease. So this patient's in her 30s, lived her whole life without knowing she had celiac disease. So this test is incredibly helpful because it tells us a lot of information, not just what your food sensitivities are, but what else is going on. Why is your gut so inflamed that it's making your immune system react to everything? So that's why we love this test so much. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up. So now once we diagnose somebody that has a leaky gut or an unhealthy gut, how do we fix it? We can fix it. That's the best part of all this. We make it better and patients get better. So it's the 4R program. I did not make this up. It was made up by the Institute of Functional Medicine. They just let us use it. So the 4Rs: remove, replace, reinoculate, and repair. Okay, so first of all, we're going to remove the triggers. And this is where people don't like us. If they even liked us to begin with. So, if the diet is poor, we have a come to Jesus talk about what it means to eat healthy. And if we get your food sensitivity results back and we find that a lot of things react, we take all of those away. But we, on the flip side, tell you everything else you can eat that you may not have ever eaten before. It just comes in the vegetable section. So we remove sugar, we remove processed carbs, unhealthy fats, we get rid of genetically modified organisms, artificial food-like substances, all of those things in the middle of the grocery store, like Go-Gurt and God only knows what, that you don't even know what it is. Pesticides, we try to eat organic if we can. We try to avoid unnecessary antibiotics. We get patients off of their acid-blocking agents. There's different supplements we can use to do that. We really try to teach them how to modify stress. That's the beauty of our 15-week program, because we teach yoga and meditation and biofeedback, so we really help them with stress. And like I said, we pay a lot of attention to their food sensitivities. This is my favorite food pyramid. You know, we all have an image in our mind of what a food pyramid looks like. The older ones, you know, had bread and cereal at the bottom and slab beef here and dairy and a vegetable way up here at the top. But my very favorite food pyramid is this one. There's not one thing on here that looks processed or packaged or artificial. It's real food, it's whole food. It takes a little more time because you actually have to cook it. You have to prepare it. It doesn't come with a label that says how many calories or how many grams of fat or sugar, but that's the beauty of it. It doesn't even come with any health claims. It doesn't have to, it's perfect. So lots of vegetables and lean organic meats and omega-3 enriched eggs and omega-3 enriched salmon. And we've got fruit and healthy fats like avocado and coconut. And then we've got some walnuts for omega-3s. And this is a beautiful pyramid. You don't see many grains on there, though. That's one thing that's different than the other food pyramids that we grew up with. There's not a lot of grain on this food pyramid. Not that you have to get rid of it completely, but you kind of do if your food sensitivity tests show that you have a sensitivity to grains. Okay, so bottom line, I think the perfect eating plan, the most perfect one in the world, I think, is number one that you will do, one that you'll stick with, one that's reasonable, but a hybrid of the Mediterranean diet and the paleo-style diet. So one that is loaded with vegetables and fruit and lots of wonderful omega-3 enriched seafood and lots of phytonutrients and antioxidants, very little, minimize the processed foods, minimize dairy. It's very anti-inflammatory. We want to minimize those whole grains if we can, especially processed grains. Those are a no-no. If we can afford to have grass-fed, pasture-raised organic animals, chicken and beef and bison, I think it's absolutely preferred if you can get to know your farmer and work with them. And we have some resources if you need them. So my food manifesto, eat real food, cook. Simple as that. Cook. Not packets and promises, change one little thing a week, do the best you can. Cook with your kids. Teach your kids to cook. If you don't do it, who's going to teach them? We're raising a generation of children that have no idea how to cook, and that's sad. Insist on ethical food and ethically raised animals. Better yet, grow your own if you can. Have a garden. It's wonderful. Cook from the heart. Quit eating numbers. Don't count calories. Don't count points. You can have a day's worth of crappy points, but still fall within the number that they want you to. It doesn't work, at least not for the long haul. This is a lifestyle change, not a diet. Celebrate food together. Say loud no to GMO. Support your local farmers for so many reasons. Support your local farmers and spread the word. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change, okay? This is what we teach our patients every day. You can do this. Okay, replace, the other R. So the original 4R program referred to replace as replacing digestive enzymes if needed. So if patients aren't producing enough digestive enzymes, we're gonna give them back. And I still do that if necessary. But I thought of a little other, I put a little twist on this R, this replace. I want you to replace your old habits with a new vision. Get rid of the old. I don't care if you ate that way for 45 years and that's the only way your husband will eat. You got a new vision and it's beautiful. It's a vision for health. It's a vision so that way you can age without morbidity and chronic disease. I want you to replace guilt with self-love. You need to love yourself enough that you're going to worship your body, cook for your body, cook for your family, because cooking is love. And if you love yourself, you will cook, and you will cook very healthy things. And don't feel guilty about spending a little bit more money at the grocery store on better food. Don't feel guilty about that. You can save money somewhere else. And the last thing I want you to replace are excuses with a mission statement. Make a mission statement, like, I'm gonna do this. No more, I don't have enough time, I don't have any cookbooks, I don't know how to do this. You write yourself down a mission statement of what you want to achieve, what your goals are, what symptoms you want to see go bye-bye. Write it down, and I guarantee you, it'll happen. You will feel better, and you will be so proud of yourself. Okay, re-inoculate. That's the third R. Sounds kind of scary. Add back the beneficial bacteria that your gut may be lacking. So that's where we're talking about our probiotics, whether you buy probiotics and take them in supplemental form, which I think when we do gut healing, we definitely start with a very high potency probiotic, and then we back down to a lesser potency one. But in order to have the good bacteria flourish, you have to feed them, and you can't feed them sugar, the wrong kinds of fats, high fructose corn syrup, highly processed gluten. Can't feed them that because then the bad bacteria will take over. So that's why you got to give them good prebiotics and lots of fiber. So I have a list of prebiotics. There's just an example: artichoke, asparagus, endive, legumes, kefir, kombucha, miso, some of the fermented foods, sauerkraut. Okay, those are all very good foods for our good bacteria. And then lastly, repair. So we have our little repairman, and this is where we can help you. We write out protocols for everybody's gut all day long. This is what we do. So there's things that we use to repair the gut. One of the most important ones is an amino acid called glutamine, L-glutamine. It is kind of the glue that will get those cells that have been torn apart by that zonulin, and it'll put those cells back together so they're no longer leaky. So I love glutamine. I cannot stress the importance of glutamine enough. I usually say about 3 to 5 grams a day. It's usually comes in a powder, and I'll show you some examples. There's a form of zinc called zinc carnosine, and zinc carnosine, it has to be the carnosine form, is very important also for healing the gut mucosa, and it's very helpful for in peptic ulcer disease as well. So we use glutamine with zinc carnosine. Omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, not only because they're incredibly powerful anti-inflammatory agents, but they're very important in healing the gut. DGL is deglyceride licorice. We use this mainly in our patients that are have acid reflux, and we don't want to put them on the little purple pill, or patients who are already on the little purple pill and they want to get off. So if you've been on the little purple pill and you've been on it for 2 years, you cannot just stop taking it because you will have this rebound. Your stomach will crank out 2 and 3 times more acid than it normally does, and then you're going to be miserable, and then the next thing you're going to do is go back to taking the little purple pill. So what we do is we put patients on DGL, deglyceride licorice, as we're weaning them off the proton pump inhibitors or the acid blockers, and it works beautifully. And this is not the form of licorice that you have to worry about if you have high blood pressure, because that's why they take the glycerin part out of it, which is what can affect your blood pressure. Marshmallow root, it has a high mucilage content, so it heals ulcers and eases inflammation, and it helps with heal the stomach lining. And then coconut oil, there's an amazing acid in coconut oil called caprylic acid. It's very soothing for a number of reasons, but it's also antiviral and it's antifungal. So coconut oil, a spoon of that in your smoothie, or saute your vegetables in coconut oil. Coconut oil, for a number of reasons, is good for gut health. This is a recipe I put in for one of my very favorite gut healing smoothies. You can use almond milk as long as your food sensitivity test does not say you have a problem with almonds like mine did. And then you can take some powdered probiotic and put a scoop of that in there. You can put your scoop of glutamine. My favorite are a couple different kinds of kale, organic berries like raspberries, blueberries, and strawberries. And then I always like to add protein powder to it because I want to use this kind of as my breakfast. So I want to have a brown rice protein or a pea protein, so it's going to keep me full longer. So that's a great little gut healing smoothie. You just put it in your blender. You can put ice cubes in it if you want it really, really cold, and you just blend it. If you don't want to buy all those things individually, you can just get Inflammacor, which is one of our very favorite products from Orthomolecular. They make it very easy because they put your glutamine in it for you. It's a powder. I hate this pointer. But it also has turmeric, quercetin, skullcap, green tea, ginger root, and it has brown rice protein. So this has everything that you need all in one, and you can mix, it comes in different flavors. You can mix it with your berries. You can add your kale to it. And it really is a great way to get everything that you need to heal your gut in a smoothie. Okay, my last slide, because again, it is Earth Day. So I love this child. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So if you weren't so good to your gut 20 years ago, you have now to make it better. So now would be the second best time to be good to your gut. And you could start that anytime. And we'd be more than happy to help you. And that's why we're here. That's what we love to do. And my gals have told me that there is a special sale tonight. Anything in our retail center is 20% off. So if anybody needs anything, books, glutamine, whatever, it's 20% off. But I guess it's tonight only, so. Okay, questions?
I don't have a question, but I wanted to tell you I had the food sensitive blood test here. And a year ago, January, I was in such terrible pain with my knees. And my dad had a perforated bowel. He was in the hospital before he passed away 2 weeks. So I mean, it wasn't the 2 weeks of hospital food, it was my food I was eating before then. But I had this test, and I cannot believe the improvement of my body. I just couldn't believe these foods I was eating was causing all this inflammation and the swelling in my knees. And I have no pain in my knees anymore, and I know you won't remember this, but I've had this pain in my side. It is gone.
Good, oh yeah.
I can't believe that the foods can do that to your body. And I'm not taking, well, when my dad was in the hospital, I was taking pain pills for my general practitioner because I was in such terrible pain and I was using a cane. And now, I think it was maybe a month or, I can't remember how long. I was just sitting and I had my hands on my knees and I felt my kneecaps, which I hadn't been able to feel because my knees were so full.
Oh,
And I was just thrilled. I was telling everyone in my family, I feel my kneecaps. So it's just amazing when you find out those foods, and I had a high sensitivity to almonds too. And my daughter would say, Mom, snack on almonds. They're very good for you. They're very good for you. So I would snack.
I was doing the same thing. Well,
It's
thank
just
you.
amazing that when you find out the foods that you're sensitive to, how much better you feel. And
Oh, I thank you for sharing that story, and really, you should be so proud of yourself because having gone through the food sensitivity testing, I know that it can be life-altering. It does change the way you eat and the way you shop, but it's so rewarding when you realize the symptoms that you had are gone, and it's a simple enough fix, and you won't have to live on painkillers anymore.
I have my weak moments at Christmas and Easter.
I understand.
I started feeling the pain in my knees. I thought, I did it without something like Christmas cookies or candy.
Those almond cookies weren't so good.
About 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and my TSH was totally in normal range, but the antibodies. So anyway, I've been reading some books about the autoimmune system and that a lot of times the gluten is a factor with the Hashimoto's.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something, you have a program, a 12 or 15-week program or something. I'm trying to educate myself because I don't know where to go
Yeah.
to get help, to help me learn how to go possibly gluten-free.
Absolutely, and that's a very common problem where patients, they may have their blood test and their TSH, which is the screening test for thyroid disease, is perfectly normal, but then when you dig deeper and you look, they have thyroid antibodies. So that tells me that your immune system is already starting to make its attack. It's starting to attack the parts of the thyroid, because a lot of times parts of the thyroid and the gluten protein have a cross reactivity, and so it's attacking the thyroid because it's trying to attack gluten. And so it's this molecular mimicry, so to speak. And so when I see patients that have thyroid antibodies, the first thing I do is take them off gluten. Even before I test, I mean, you could do your food sensitivity testing, but I tell them if they don't want to spend the $85 or whatever to do food sensitivity testing, I say just go off gluten, and then we'll look into some other things.
But when you say go off gluten, it's like there's gluten, what's
Yeah.
really gluten-free and what isn't,
Yeah,
and what's labeled
that's a good question.
correctly?
So one of the, in our lifestyle program, we spend a lot of time, you get a binder, we spend a lot of time on where does gluten hide, what does it mean to go gluten-free. That doesn't mean that you go to the gluten-free section at Hy-Vee and buy every processed gluten-free food, because all of that is very high in sugar. Tapioca starch is not gluten, but that is not good for you. So I'd much rather, when I tell patients go gluten-free, I mean, I want you to go to a whole foods diet that is of non-processed foods that does not involve gluten. But we have handouts in the program. Yeah, absolutely.
You're supposed to eat a lot of cruciferous vegetables.
Yeah.
But eating too much of it isn't good for your thyroid.
There's a controversy on that. There's a controversy on whether too much cruciferous vegetables can affect thyroid function. And there was just a study that came out last week that's still inconclusive on that. So I agree that cruciferous vegetables are very important, because there are studies that show that as vegetable intake in general increased by 20%, cancer rates dropped by 20%. But when cruciferous vegetable intake went up by 20%. Cancer rates drop by 40%. So cruciferous vegetables are incredibly important to fight cancer because they improve liver detoxification, they're antioxidants, they have a variety of wonderful attributes. But what I tell patients is, if you think you're going to be eating enough cruciferous vegetables to be affecting your thyroid, we just need to monitor it. So I tell them, eat as many cruciferous vegetables as you want, but we need to monitor your thyroid, whether we check your thyroid once a month for the first few months or once every couple months, just to make sure that we're not missing it. But I tend to not, if someone's excited and ready to eat cruciferous vegetables, I tend to not squash that. I say, let's go for it, and then we'll see how your thyroid is. But then I would also put them on thyroid support. B vitamins, selenium, zinc. I'd make sure that they have enough of the nutrients that they need to convert T4 to T3.
On that cruciferous thing, I've read so many things, but I was reading the raw affected your thyroid more than the cooked. But I don't know which is right.
Yeah, and again, I think they're still trying to tease that out. Correct. Hi, Danielle. How are you?
What protein powder would you recommend for smoothies?
Yeah.
Like, and what do you think, I heard you mention brown rice, but what do you think of whey?
I like brown rice. I like pea protein, or I like a combination of the two. Pea protein. It's a hypoallergenic protein.
Are those
I think.
complete proteins?
Say that again.
Are those complete proteins?
Complete. Yeah.
Okay.
Now whey, if you don't have a sensitivity to it, it can be okay because whey can actually be somewhat healing or soothing to the gut. But I find a lot of patients have a whey sensitivity because of its cross-reactivity with casein. So you have to be very careful with whey protein unless you do the food sensitivity testing. Yeah.
What about the talk about arsenic in the rice and brown rice protein, and it's supposed to be higher in brown rice than white rice?
Yeah.
Is there a true concern, or is
I think
a lot of hype?
What I do is I know my distributor. So the brown rice that I would recommend, the brown rice protein, I'm going to get it from Orthomolecular because I know they subject their product to independent testing and that they've looked at levels of things like contaminants, pesticides, herbicides, so I know that that product is free of heavy metals or chemicals. But I agree, if you were buying a brown rice protein from Walmart, I don't know. You know, that's a very good question.
I have a question about the gut healing. If you had said that with the food sensitivities, with the leaky gut, that's when it's a problem. How do you know when your gut is healed then after doing all of that?
Good question.
And then are you able to reintroduce those foods?
Yes. Okay, so what I tell patients is we usually eliminate those foods for 3 months while we heal the gut. And then we'll start back by adding like the foods that are 1+. So the mildly sensitive foods, we'll add those back. We add them back usually one at a time to make sure that the symptoms that you had before don't come back. Then if you do fine with those foods, we then go to the 2+ foods. If gluten is 2 or 3, I personally tell patients don't ever put gluten back into your system. But you can introduce foods. You don't have to be off all of them forever. Like I'm not planning on being off of banana. I had a 1+ to a banana. I'm not planning on being off banana forever. Once I heal my gut, I'm eating bananas again. Yeah.
Do you think everyone with Hashimoto's should avoid the gluten?
I do.
Even if it didn't come up on a food sensitivity?
I do, because the reason why, the more literature I read about the interaction between gluten and autoimmune thyroiditis, I'm convinced that there's molecular mimicry, and I do recommend staying off gluten in that case. But if you stay off gluten and their antibody levels do not improve, though, you have to go looking for something else. The something else could be mercury, heavy metals, infections. So all of those things can affect the immune system and cause it to attack the thyroid. I start with gluten because it's the most common culprit. But I had a dental hygienist who came in and hers was mercury. Fillings. Yep.
Going to the store and reading a lot about smoothies, they're supposed to be so good. Well, they're either full of fruit or they're full of like cruciferous vegetables. And the other, you can get too much of. I have a thyroid issue, so I'm not try to eat smoothies.
Do you make your own?
That's what I was going to do.
I'd make my own.
But again, the
Or-
recipes either have lots of carrots and fruit or lots of,
My suggestion to you would be juice and add protein powder to juice. So when you're juicing, you can juice 3 vegetables to 1 fruit, and then add your protein powder. So you're getting the protein that you may have gotten in your smoothie, but you're not getting the sugar or maybe you're not going to juice kale and cabbage, or maybe you're not going to juice some of the cruciferous vegetables that you're trying to avoid. But if you do it yourself, you can tailor it to what you like and what works best for you. But I love juicing, so you can just add your protein to your juice, then you'll get the benefit of that too. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
I wonder if you've been diagnosed with bacterial overgrowth, but you've also tested positive in the food sensitivity. What does the bacterial overgrowth have to, how do you get that back normal?
Okay, are we talking small bowel bacterial overgrowth, SIBO?
Hydrogen test.
Okay, yeah. So SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is a little different than just dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in the good and the bad bacteria. So SIBO, a lot of times it can be due to a number of different reasons. Sometimes diabetics will have poor motility and the bacteria aren't moving through, and they get then overpopulated in the small bowel, and then that's when usually they'll produce a lot of gas, a lot of bloating, like extreme bloating, like as soon as you eat something, you feel like you're 9 months pregnant. Extreme bloating because of all the gas that the bacteria are producing. So that's usually treated with an antibiotic, here we go, but the difference is it's treated with an antibiotic that does not leave the gut. Very little of it gets absorbed systemically, so the antibiotic, it's Xifaxan. It's FDA approved for traveler's diarrhea. It can be a little costly if they don't approve it for SIBO, but it works well. So you have to get rid of the overgrowth first and then fix the underlying cause as to why you have SIBO in the first place. The other thing is if you can't afford the antibiotic, there's naturally occurring antimicrobials like berberine, oregano oil, cat's claw, some of the things that we can use to naturally be an antimicrobial.
So are the old wheat seeds gone?
Oh, probably. How old are we talking? Like the wheat of the Bible?
Before they hybridized it out of its good function. I mean,
I think they're gone, but Hope, are they gone?
my understanding of a hybrid is you can't replant a hybrid. It's
Yeah, so
changed genetically so that it.
I think Hope, I'm gonna go to that on.
So what are they using to make hybrids out of? Really? Because you can't take a hybrid and make a hybrid and a hybrid. You have to have the old mother plant.
Well, my mother's plants aren't legally allowed to be sold to farmers. So the bioengineering companies that are making these new hybrids, they own them, but they don't allow them to go out to any mass producer or farmer. Now, yes. In Europe, they actually do have pure strains, but they're not allowed to be brought in.
Or the imported flour from them.
Yes.
Is the food testing covered by insurance?
It's typically not. There are 2 companies that we use. The company that we've really had good luck with is called Alites. I like their results because the company's very reputable, but I also like the company because it's very affordable. So the basic kind of entry-level food sensitivity test looks at 96 different foods and spices for $85. So I think for the most part, it's an $85, it's very well spent. You can double that with that company and look at over 180 different foods and spices. So if you eat things that aren't necessarily on the entry level test, you can have a more expanded test, but it's still under $200.
And one other question, does leaky gut show up on like CT scans?
Oh, good question.
Or
Yeah.
whenever you go to the doctor,
Yeah.
you complain about your stomach, they do the scope.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I should have stated that. It does not show up on any imaging test because it's happening on such a microscopic level that it's not anything that's going to show up on a CT or an X-ray, or if you end up getting an endoscopy where they put the scope down to look into the upper colon, it may show inflammation. They may get an idea that something's going on because that tissue looks inflamed, but it doesn't necessarily show leaky gut.
Do you deal with children, and how does this, if they had sensitivities, affect short-term memory and learning?
Yeah, perfect example. So we do help children. I'll give you an example. My 14-year-old son has allergies, he has asthma, he has eczema. He had multiple surgeries when he was a baby because he had a bowel obstruction. He spent the first 2 months of his life in the intensive care unit at St. Francis. He had multiple doses of steroids, and he was born 4 weeks early. So he basically came into this world with unfortunately, a very poor gut to begin with. And now at 14, his asthma is worse, his eczema is worse, he now has acne, he's now getting hives. And so I was this close to getting him to come today to get the food sensitivity test. He finally, because it's now a vanity issue, because he has acne, he now thinks that he's going to get his gut cleaned up. But yes, and going back to your question, with kids, the cognitive effects that or the effects on the cognition, hyperactivity, poor concentration, mood swings, irritability. And yes, that could be a teenager in general. Or someone menopausal. But a lot of it can be because of the gut. Because remember, we need the proper amount of serotonin to be in a good mood. And if 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut and our gut is shot, no wonder we're moody, we can't remember anything, we're irritable, and we can't concentrate.
What about the substantia nigra for dopamine production? I always thought that was completely controlled by the brain. I had no idea that gut was implicated in dopamine. What about the Parkinson's patients where they're doing all that electrical stimulation and all that in the brain to dopamine?
So you need to come to the talk.
Come in August.
Come in August.
Okay, yeah.
Have you read?
I don't remember this question that long.
Have you read Grain Brain?
No.
There you go. It's written by a neurologist, and he talks about the effects of gut health on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, MS. Very, very well written book. It's on the New York Times bestseller list. Very powerful.
What's the author?
David Perlmutter.
It's 20% off tonight.
Oh, it's 20% off tonight.
I was just gonna ask what else you recommended reading.
Gut Bliss. It's written by a female gastroenterologist. She's an integrative gastroenterologist. I love, love, love this book. She has meal plans at the end. She makes it very practical. Grain Brain, Practical Paleo, which is another one we're going to be giving away. Love this book. And then Digestive Wellness by Elizabeth Lipsky. Those are our favorites for the gut.
Do you go over those again?
I would. So Practical Paleo So this explains how to eat in the way that I talked about, that is no processed, lots of vegetables, lean organic meats, very little grains. So practical paleo, gut bliss, GUTBLISS, digestive wellness by Lipski, Lipski. Right, I got it? Okay. And grain brain.
If someone were to want to have food sensitivity testing done, what would you suggest is the next best first step?
Repeat that question, I'm sorry.
If someone were to want to have this food sensitivity testing
Yes.
done, what would you suggest is the next best
Okay,
first step?
so for someone who wants to have food sensitivity test, what is the next best step? Easy enough. You just call the office, tell them that you would like to come in and have an appointment to get food sensitivity testing done. It's a blood test. It does not need to be fasting. My one suggestion is if you are someone that avoids gluten or you avoid dairy or you're avoiding soy, you may want to eat those things for the 2 weeks prior to having the test done because you may get a false negative on that test. So I tell patients just kind of eat a well-rounded kind of comprehensive diet before you have the test done. And then once you get the test results back, we have you come in and usually Hope, our PA, she's our gut guru, she goes over the results with you and what our recommendations are. So she explains what you need to avoid and for how long, and then she goes through the gut healing protocol that either I recommended or she recommended, depending on who you end up seeing here at the office. So we make it very easy. And then we set up your follow-up just to make sure you're doing okay, make sure that you don't have any questions. We give you lots of handouts. So if it's gluten per se, we give you lots of support so you know how to avoid gluten.
Are a lot of your services here covered by insurance? Or
Most are covered by insurance, including Medicare.
I just have two questions.
Yeah.
Do you recommend taking digestive enzymes? And the second one is, if you were to take a probiotic, what would you recommend and how, what dosage?
Okay, good question. So do I recommend digestive enzymes? Yes and no. There is a comprehensive digestive stool analysis that we sometimes will do if someone comes in and has a lot of abdominal symptoms and we just can't crack the code. We're trying to figure it out. And in that stool analysis, it will give us an idea on whether or not someone is producing enough digestive enzymes and what the level is. And if they're not, then we know that's a very objective result that says you need to take digestive enzymes. If patients don't necessarily want to put the money in that test or the time or effort into that test, if I heal the gut with all those other things and patients still aren't quite perfect or normal or they're just not back to where they want to be, I'll say, you know what? Let's add back some digestive enzymes and see if that's the piece of the puzzle that we're missing. What I try to do, though, is I try not to send patients out of here with a bag of 15 different things because it's costly and it's overwhelming, and then you feel like you need a pill box, and you go, So I try to just hit it hard where I think we're gonna have the greatest impact. And personally, I've been very, very happy with the other things that we put on there. Yes, I use digestive enzymes, but I don't make it a first line in healing the gut. And probiotics, what brand, what kind? It's a little difficult to answer because we're so advanced now in probiotic research that there's certain strains for certain ailments, and it's not a one-size-fits-all by any means, but if you wanted just a good overall entry-level probiotic, you want one that has at least 20 billion strains and a good kind of variety of lactobacillus, different strains of lactobacillus, bifidobacter, sometimes Saccharomyces, which is actually a yeast, depending on the case. So I like to use a product called Orthobiotic, which is from Orthomolecular, for 2 reasons. They're freeze-dried, so you don't have to keep them in the refrigerator, and they're tested at multiple times throughout their shelf life to make sure that the 20 billion strains that they had when they initially put them in the capsule is still there 6 months after they've been sitting on the shelf in 90-degree weather. So that's why I like that product.
Do you have any thoughts on raw milk versus homogenized, pasteurized milk?
Raw milk versus homogenized versus pasteurized. And I think that's an area of extreme controversy right now. It's a heated discussion about the risks of raw milk versus the benefits of raw milk. And my guess, my answer to that as a physician, even though I'm outside of the box most of the time, I would still, at this point, say I don't know enough about raw milk and the safety to be able to tell a patient that that's okay and that they're not going to get sick. Because I take an oath to first do no harm, and I would never want to steer somebody down the wrong path. But if we're wanting to try to get more healthier sources of milk or healthier additives in the milk, such as more of the good probiotics, then I'm saying, okay, let's maybe think of kefir, fermented milk, kombucha, tea. Maybe we could have, add some other fermented products in to see if we can at least achieve some of the goal that you're wanting to get with raw milk, but in a safer way.
Speaking of kefir, can you do kefir instead of like a orthomolecular probiotic? Is it enough to do kefir? And is there a difference in your mind between water kefir and milk kefir?
Good question. I think the kefir granules in general, depending on the brand, are going to give you what you need, whether it's fermented milk, because that's truly what you're getting the biggest bang from, are the kefir granules. So is doing kefir alone enough, or do you also need a probiotic? And I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If someone has an incredibly unhealthy gut and they have multiple symptoms like I listed on those slides, I don't think you're going to get enough probiotic in kefir to do what we want, to achieve what we want. So that's where I'll at least start with a probiotic supplement and then maybe back off as their gut is healing and switch to kefir. Or add kefir on top of the probiotic that we're going to use. Last question. Katie runs a tight ship here.
Does anybody have any of the entry forms from the email ones? Oh, I didn't put my email. Not the quiz ones. We'll do
Not the quiz ones.
In a minute.
I had no idea. Can I bother? Thank you. Okay. Does anybody want to take a stab? Close. It's not chamomile. In the ring?
Rapeseed? Yeah.
It is. However, it's canola, rapeseed. Yeah. So those of you who got it right, let us know. It is.
Perfect. Who's drawing?
No, I don't need to.
I don't want to draw. I'll have Teresa draw.
Teresa can draw.
Teresa, you're a lucky hand. Marsha Ebner? All right. Marsha, you and your choice of books. So we've got Gut bliss or practical paleo?
Or grain brain.
Or brain brain?
Gut bliss.
Sounds like Christmas. Wilda Martin? Wilda, you get your choice of book too. Okay.
All right.
And then for the last one, we're gonna do your quiz answers. Okay, so does everybody still have your little quiz papers? Okay.
Are we doing the ones that got it right? The ones that wrote
So I'm
canola?
just gonna collect everybody's, yeah, or I guess if you want. we're
Put, the
gonna
ones that
it
put
last.
canola in, the ones that wrote canola, put that in, and we'll pick one.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, let me,
It's rapeseed or canola. You'll get a special present.
Jane? Emily?
Oh, Jane.
All right, so you'll get to come up and pick your prize too. And then, let's see, so we have a gut bliss, we have a detox, and we've got a grain brain in the back. So
Okay.
I think one more.
Okay, so Jane, you either get gut bliss or grain brain. You want gut bliss? Okay. Oh, great. Oh, so you, there you go. This winner gets the week-long detox. $102 detox.
I just did it, it's great.
It's great. It is great. There, you are welcome. Yep. We're good?
Anything else?
We're good. All right. That's a wrap. All right. But thank you guys very much for coming. It's really an honor.